just want to cover some boxing news, and I want to start off and ask you about the return of Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao, 46 years old now, has announced that he's going to return to the ring in July versus the WBC interim champion, welterweight champion, Mario Barrios. Now, 46 years old, he's not completely inactive. His last professional fight was over 4 years ago in the ring. That was a tough one. That was against the Cuban Ugas. But he's had some recent exhibition matches, with the most recent one being in July, and that was a tough one. He took some punishment in that fight. I know it was an exhibition, but it was a tough exhibition match. I thought after that, I wouldn't like to see Manny fight anymore. Well, for whatever the reasons may be, Manny Pacquiao is coming back. And with that being said, there's a lot of people that are criticizing the fight. Not as much as Manny coming back at his age, but more so that he's skipping the line. That he goes right into the top 5 of the WBC, skips the line, and he fights for the title. Eddie Hearn, Juan Manuel Marquez, and many others have voiced their displeasure with this. In response, the WBC president Mauricio Suleiman has defended his organization's decision. They stand by it. And he said, hey, my father received a lot of criticism when Leonard was going to come back, Sugar Ray, and fight Marvin Haggler. What do you make of this fight of Pacquiao coming back and just of the decision by the WBC overall?
Look, Suleiman is the head. He followed in his father's footsteps. He's kept that organization in a powerful place, so you give him credit for that. Like him or hate him, he's a businessman. He's gone over to Saudi Arabia where everybody else is going over there. He's kept himself front and center. He's kept himself relevant, and his organization relevant. He's doing what a president of a company has to do, and he's doing his job. He's doing that. As far as what he says and the reasons for things, people have a right to question those reasons too, And as far as, first of all, I'd appreciate more people just cut to the chase and just shoot it straight, rather than use Leonard as an example with his father, which, okay, that's fair, but just use like I do with the movies and just go right to The Godfather and say, hey, it's business, baby. It ain't personal. Because, if we get past all the crap, it's business. And, look, Suleiman has a right to use that one, to pick that one. He's thinking on his feet. He's coming up with something. He's coming up with some history. Leonard with Haggler, there were people that Leonard had been, of course, inactive. He's going to fight to move up in weight, even though he had moved up. He had already fought at light heavyweight. He dropped back down to middleweight. So it wasn't like Leonard hadn't tested the waters at a heavier weight. But look, he had been inactive. He was fighting a great Marvin Haggler. It was later in Haggler's career. Talk about a tough fight, leaving some in the ring. Haggler had just come off the Mugabe fight. I always thought that took something out of Marvin. Taking nothing away, everyone knows I love Ray Leonard. He's one of my favorite people, one of my favorite fighters in the whole world. He could fit into any era. And I got him listed in a list showing that he's one of my greatest and fits into any era. Even the 1700s, like some of you wise guys say, that I love the fighters from so far back, even though I don't know any of them from the 1700s, but whatever. So you want to go and use that.
How old was Leonard at that time?
Leonard was only 32 years old when he fought Haggler. Yeah, he'd been inactive, but he was only 32. Pacquiao's 46. So right there you could, it ain't a good comparison. It sounds good. It sounds good, yeah, because Leonard did come back. Leonard did win a very close fight, a controversial fight, but a great fight. And Leonard was great. There's no doubt about it. And he cut the line. He earned it. Leonard, you could say, and you could say Pacquiao earned the right with all his greatness to cut a lot of lines. Yeah, You know, I see it all the time. The other day I was at a benefit. The foundation was given something by St. Philip's Church, 155-year-old church, great church, do great work in the community. I sure as hell didn't know I was going to be talking about this. And they gave us an award for helping them in the community, what the foundation does. We don't need an award. We're privileged that we can help. But people feel they inclined to do that, fine. It's very nice. And your mom asked for a drink. So I went up to the bar to get a drink. I didn't realize that there was a long line. And so I went right to the front, not understanding that I passed the line. And then a friend of mine said, you cut the line. And the whole line said, Teddy, that's okay. I said, no, I didn't realize I cut the line. I'll go back. So I went back, I waited in line. But they were going to allow me to cut the line. I guess because I'm handsome. I guess because I had a nice suit on. I had a nice tie. Whatever. But out of some kind of respect, which I really appreciate, whether I deserve it or not, they were letting me cut the line. So I understand that some people get the privilege, they get the respect, the allowance of cutting a line. I'm not against that. I'm not complete. Yeah, I know you make the argument there's other guys that deserve to shot more, that you step past them. But that's always going to be the case. I mean, are you kidding me? If we're going to start now talking about that kind of stuff, then what about these ridiculous number one contenders that sometimes you wonder, how did they become a number one contender? I wonder how. Yeah, come on. You really wonder how? But how did you watch them and you see them, you say, oh my God, they made that guy a number one contender? They moved him up from where I didn't even know who he was yesterday to now he moved from number 35 in the world to number 1 to fight for a world title. Was that right? How many guys did he pass up? So if you're going to start worrying about guys that are passed, I don't disagree with you. But it's a lot more than every once in a while an iconic fighter stepping up, an iconic, legendary fighter cutting the line. Yeah, so I understand that better than I understand the comparison of Leonard and Haggler as fighters. Because Leonard was 32 years old and Leonard had 40 fights at the time. Pacquiao is 46. Let's get to facts. That's what we do here. We get to facts. Pacquiao is 46 years old and has 72 fights. Do the math. Please. Again, I'll repeat it one more time. You want to use that comparison? Leonard was 32 when he fought Haggler. He had 40 fights. Pacquiao's 46 years old, 72 fights, and coming off, as you said, Bud, an exhibition where you have to worry about the way he looked. He didn't look good. He took punishment from a bigger guy, but a guy who wasn't a high-level fighter. And it's got to worry you if you're a human being. I'm just talking now not as a boxing guy. I'm talking now as a member of something called the human race. I think I'm a member of that. And I like to stay a member. And the only way that you can really stay a member, there's no dues that are involved. There's no membership, fees. You just have to care about your fellow human beings. That's how you keep your membership. And in that way, I'm very concerned. I don't want to stop anyone from making a living, from making money. But I'm very concerned with a guy, a great man, who's helped his people, who's fought for his people, who's lifted his people up, who's given away money to his people, probably too much. But he gave away money to his people, that is in a position now that he has to fight at 46 after 72 fights. I'm concerned. that he's got to fight a young guy that has been active, and I'm concerned. I'm concerned about that. That's it for me.
I'm with you. And I am concerned as well, being a huge Manny Pacquiao fan, the only 8th division world champion in boxing history. I do want to ask you this, though. At the welterweight class division, where Yordenis is a champion, Brian Norman is a new young champion on the scene. We're not talking about Pacquiao versus them. We're talking about Mario Barrios, and taking nothing away from him. A big win when he won the title and upset Ugas, and Ugas gave a vicious beating to Manny Pacquiao in his last fight. I know Styles makes fights, throw that one out. Mario Barrios' last fight was on the undercard of Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, and he had a draw versus a guy, Ramos, who I believe had 6 losses on his record at the time. Is it the right stylistic matchup out of all the champions? Can Manny Pacquiao win the title again and pull off the upset like he did in 2019 when he beat Keith Thurman to win the title at that time?
Listen, you do a great job, bud. You really do. If you get tired of this show, become a prosecutor. You'd be a hell of a lawyer. You'd be a hell of a prosecutor.
We already have one good lawyer in the family.
Well,
I don't want to be in her shadow.
No, that's a tough shadow. But you'd lay out good cases. That's what I'm trying to say. You bring out things that need to be said. And Barrios is not naturally as big a man as those other welterweights. So start there. That's a fair point. He moved up in weight, Barrios. So he's not a naturally big, natural welterweight. And of course, we understand Pacquiao has moved up. My God, I don't even know when he first turned pro. You would have thought maybe he could have been a jockey.
Yeah,
I mean he was
108 pounds, right?
Yeah, jockeys are about 105 pounds, I think, somewhere around that neighborhood. I mean, can you imagine him though going to the whip? He might have killed the horse. That's the only thing. Yeah, you would have had Petter. What is it called? Peter, whatever. Peter. You would have had Peter coming after you. You know, look what he did to this horse. You know, but look, I love Pacquiao. One of my favorite people. One of my favorite fighters in the whole world. He's moved up from like whatever. Incredible weight. People forget about that. That's why I brought it up. How many weight classes this man has really moved up. Incredible. Just incredible. But now, yeah, Barrios wouldn't be as big as those other guys, but he's still a guy that's confident. He's a guy that's a world champion. He's a guy who throws a lot of punches. He's a guy who's younger, who's active, you know, who I know you can't go by this guy beat this guy, but he could beat that guy, but he could beat this guy. But you can't go by that in my business, in this business, because styles make fights. But you're right. He beat Ugas. You could say Ugas was a little older than when he fought him a little bit, than when Pacquiao fought him, and maybe that made a difference, whatever. But he did take a lot of punishment, Pacquiao, in the Ugas fight. I thought that Pacquiao, for his age, at that moment, even though he lost the fight, even though he took punishment, I thought he performed as well as he could. I thought he performed well. I really did. I have to say the truth. I thought he performed well for what he could do at that weight and at that point in his life. But I also thought after that fight, he should probably think about leaving, because he performed as well as he could against a guy who's a good fighter, but against a guy who 5 years earlier he would have handled. And that tells you something. I just think you're playing with fire. That's all I think. Yeah, you could move around, you could move around, you know, navigate a little bit, say this, say that, but there comes to a certain point with everything that no matter how much you move the furniture around, you still know what room you're in. You still know what room. You can't fool yourself. And he's in a room where he's 46 years old with 72 fights. I rest my case, counselor.
Yeah. The last thing I will say, and You made some great points. Is you have said this before when it comes to great ones and great champions, that the great ones sometimes have one last one in them. Does he have one last performance in him? We're going to find out in July versus Barrios. My concern, to wrap it up on this, Bud, is that this isn't a one-time comeback fight. And Manny Pacquiao is going to fight again. And if he does win, let's say, it's going to be unification. Whether it's Enos, whether it's a Raleigh Romero, whoever, I do think there's going to be another one. And that's what I'm even more concerned about.
And that's why you'll be a great prosecutor, because that's what you brought up at the end. And that's so true. It's not one and done. That is so on the point. You know damn well, unfortunately, that the position Manny's in, I don't want to get into his personal stuff, but the saddest part is if he's fighting, but if he's fighting for money at this point in his life, if that's why he's fighting because he has to, that makes it even sadder and even scarier, which is a good chance that is the case. And I wish and pray it ain't. You know, some people, they fight and continue when they shouldn't because of the limelight, because, you know, they miss it, because that's the only way they're relevant, and all that stuff, you know. But that's dangerous too. All of it's dangerous when you're past your prime and way past your prime. But to that point, you know that it's not just the Barrios fight. If he wins, you know he's fighting one of those fights. And that becomes even a scarier proposition. And if he loses, double down on the scary. Because when he came back to begin with, was for a reason. You would have to say, well, that one fight might have not satisfied that reason. So he'll be there for another one, at least.